This being the appointed time and place and seeing a quorum present, I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you'd all please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Paul, would you please take the roll?
Yes. Paul Van Langenberg, here. Doug Will.
Here.
Tony Arnett,
Here.
Jennifer Backey,
Here.
Tina Johnson. Steve Coppell,
Here.
Katie Najarian,
Here.
David Schrader,
Here.
David Smith.
Here. All right, preview the agenda. Do we have any changes we need to make?
We do not appear to have our student board representatives, so
Okay.
I would
Like to skip that item.
likely skip that.
And Paul, if you would please note for the record that Tina's here.
Okay.
That's you, babe.
All right, then this brings us to public input. This is one of two times in the agenda where the members of the public may address the board on any item they'd like. Just please wait to be recognized, either online or in person. And when I recognize, please give your name and address for the record and keep your remarks brief. And if you're online and like to be recognized, please use the raise your hand feature and we will call upon you to activate your hand. Is there anyone who'd like to be recognized at this time? Online? There's one.
Tracy Finch.
Tracy Finch.
Yes, my name is Tracy Finch, West Main Street in Watertown. I'm coming to you to ask you to implement a few things before COVID cases get drastically bad again as they were in January. Sure, the district has addressed dramatic drop in positive cases over the past month in the schools and in the community, though this does not mean everyone can drop all COVID precautions and honestly go back to the way things were in the past in the year 2019. What you seriously need to put into place is a COVID mitigation escalation guidelines. The Oconomowoc Area School District has done a good job in implementing such mitigations and not falling into a spiral of chaos with no clear metrics. The district is quite flexible with what they are doing. I am sure there were not many teachers who were feeling burned out or being pulled this way or that way, or to who knows what class on the spur of the moment. Here are a couple of examples that the district has set up for the mitigations. One, case-to-case transmission in a classroom, temporary mask requirement for classrooms. Another is if a 7-day average positive case in the district, geographical region with a pattern of 12.5 or higher, and or the correlation cases in a school, temporary, which equals to temporary school-wide mask requirement until pattern downturns below 12.5. Plus all their mitigation guidelines, they still have contact tracing. What good things to see in a school district caring for the well-being of students and staff while still being able to give quality education. Parents know what to look out for on a day-to-day basis while within the community. And they can make plans just in case if they need to work from home or make other arrangements for their family. At the last school board meeting, I asked whether in-person learning with masks as a requirement or virtual learning from home for a temporary period would be more detrimental. I believe virtual learning to be more detrimental because I think we can agree that no parent wants to have to try to teach their children who are in-person learning, who are used to in-person learning, and cause a whole entire family a great deal amount of stress that can be permanently damaging, not to just the children, but to parents and guardians and siblings within the family. The only thing I'm seeing with this problem is that most children see masks as so inconvenient that it comes directly from their parents and guardians who hate them and want nothing to do with masks. All they want to do is complain so much about how bad masks are and in front of their children. Children do pick on what parents feel about certain topics, so there needs to be a better way of going about this. So please put some mitigation points for next year's school, or even now, just in case COVID cases or even flu gets out of control. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right. There will be another time at the end of the meeting for comments. Next is announcements and recognition / communications. Again, our student board representatives are not here, so we'll skip that item and we'll move on to the state education convention reflections. And I believe that Tina wanted to speak to this.
Yeah, I'll give a little report as far as I attended the school board convention in January, and I was able to go all day on Thursday, and then they had half a day on Friday as well. And I was really very impressed with just, they had the different titles of different breakout rooms and things like that. And there were actually multiples that I wish I could have been in, different places at different times. So I just really wanted to share just kind of a overview of different things that I attended and different things that I took away. So I attended 6 different breakouts. I had Unity in the Community Begins With You, Tech Corner, Awaken Student Innovation, Rebuilding a Culture, the Lessons Learned, Cultivating Culture in an Enriching Environment, How to Navigate Change, and Effective Continuous School Improvement Processes. So through this, it was really helpful, I thought, because it really had a theme, then you hear from not only the speaker, but, you meet different people from different school districts and things like that. So you've got that networking opportunity. And so really they came out with, or I took away several themes as far as we can't do everything. And I know we've heard that too. And like many communities have, of course, experienced the adversity through the last couple of years that we have, and a lot of school boards have been, felt a lot of pressure from special interest groups, and they've experienced turnover, just like we have. So it was great that they were able to highlight the success stories, and some things that they shared that were successful through these different times. Things like focus and framework on the school's mission. And so like at the school board meeting, each of the school board members had like their school card with their mission and their vision and things like that. They also had a couple of core values on that. So when they were looking at making decisions, they would kind of refer back to that and even start the meeting with that, so that it just brought more unity and focus, helping as far as to making decisions and everybody kind of moving in the same direction at the same time. That created more consistency and clarity. Also helped as far as in solving problems, how you solve the problems, and bringing the focus back to the mission. And, obviously that just kind of moves everybody in the same place. They also had said, like several different ones had said that they had a board retreat. In which, at that retreat, then they established like core values as far as what was important to this group so that they could have, healthy discussion and make decisions. They also talked about intentional leadership strategies, which creates culture, which is everyone's responsibility. They talked about the strategic plan being guided by the core values, the mission, and the vision. Focus on continuous improvement as far as the board evaluates how we are all doing. But as far as a lot of different districts talked about, they did a lot of different parent surveys and used that as communication tools and help in their continuous improvement. And their continuous improvement really focused around truth in recognizing problems, the needs, root causes, and action steps needed. And just really be willing to, go through that evaluation process, plans, action, and getting like staff, teachers, and leaders, like giving everybody a voice in that. They talked about communication and how important like respectful communication was between, staff and community and board members, and just really having that established there. The other section on creating an environment for student achievement, I thought was really interesting, just to hear a little bit more detail, because social emotional, is in our strategic plan. So it was interesting to hear from different schools as far as they also focused on it's important to meet students where they are as far as social emotional learning, struggling learners, high achieving students, and how the social emotional needs are being met through mental health and responsive classrooms. And through meeting those things, it increased student achievement. And they also talked about, meeting social emotional needs as a proactive way to help with discipline and creating environments for student achievement. So like how important connections that students and teachers have when they have circle time and recap their weekends and those kinds of things, to be able to build those connections as a strong foundation for student achievement. And then on Friday, we also had like a greeting from the governor. We had special guest speakers, we had performers and things like that. So it was just really neat to see all those things. I found it to be very valuable as far as just, networking, understand the success stories of people, like people have been where we are, and, how they've moved through it. And so it also affirms some of, like what we're doing. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're doing that. And they saw success with it. Okay. Of course, and then it also affirms, things like, oh, okay, maybe we could be doing this better, or, maybe this is a different way to look at it and things like that. So overall, I thought it was a really great learning opportunity.
Thank you. And I would say that many of the presentations and sessions, either the presentation materials or recording of the session are available. There is a registration fee, and if you really want access to those, please work through Jamie, and she will make sure to get you registered and get access if you want that. If you're not able to attend. Anyone else that wanted to comment on the convention? Okay. Other communications and recognition.
We do have some donations to recognize. K&S Manufacturing donating $1,000 towards our Skills USA program. Interpack of Wisconsin donating $500. And Wall Wrap Law donating $1,000 as well. So we will pass those around. As always, we are tremendously grateful to the community support that we get, and also tremendously grateful to the time and energy that Jesse Domer and that CTE team devote to creating those partnerships and facilitating some of these opportunities for giving. So fantastic partnerships that we have here in Watertown.
Thank you, and thank you to all those donors. Again, the materials will circulate so you can see the details on those. Anything else under announcements and communication?
I do not have any other announcements or communications.
All right, then we will move on to strategic discussion, and our first item up, Mr. Williamson, to talk about budget drivers, budget calendar, and enrollment.
So I'll kind of fly past the budget calendar. You can read through that, and we've got plenty of time before a budget actually is approved in late October to discuss timelines on the budget. Just as a reminder, our fiscal year always ends June 30th. But given the way the state formula works, budgets for schools do not need to be approved until late October. That's final budgets. We'll probably do a preliminary budget in June. Or take a look at depends kind of updates through October. But the budget calendar itself just goes through some of these important points we're going through right now. I'll spend a little time on enrollment projections. The finance committee spent a majority, kind of a truncated finance committee to my deep disappointment. And enrollment projections, we spent the most amount of time on discussing, and this isn't new from what we saw at the annual meeting, but it's good to kind of bring it back up and take a look. And there were a lot of, we can all kind of speak to some of the things that the finance committee called out on this, but you can follow these lines through. These are the lines that we're going to use for our projections moving forward with the budget. You're going to see clearly over the course of the next 5 years, using what's called the cohort survival method, that enrollment will continue to drop given the calculation. That calculation is mostly driven by how much or how students called survive, that carry forward from year to year on a historical average, as well as kind of the number you plug in at the 4K level. So that 4K level projects forward. And as you can see, what I'm using is simply the 21-22 current 4K enrollment. So if that 4K enrollment bounces back to closer to 19-20 levels, then you're going to find those projections not so challenging, dire, whatever you want to call that word about declining enrollment. From what I gathered, and anyone else at the community level can speak to this, the main takeaway was that we knew that, of course, the numbers at the 11, 12, that 300 number was falling off. The numbers coming on, clearly not as high. And that was planned and anticipated. What seems to be happening though at the lower levels, kindergarten, first, second grade is a really soft number. Those numbers are lower than anticipated. And so is this a trend or is this a blip is kind of what we need to wrestle with moving forward. Anybody from the committee though could speak to anything else on enrollment projections.
So I guess the three things you highlighted. One, we've known about the demographic wave of smaller classes moving up through our grades. We're anticipating it reach the high school. We've now seen the last of our sort of largest grades of high school moving out. That's the first thing it's referring to. I'd also note that if you look particularly at K-6 and the drop off that we experienced in the first COVID year, shall we describe it? We've actually recovered the majority of those students back as of this year, at least in grades K-6. The majority of those are, I'll say they're back, right? Or at least our numbers have gotten back up to the levels that were pre-COVID there, with the exception of, then the third point, the surprise is now 2 years in a row of lower than anticipated numbers at 4K and 5K. And that's what we don't know at the moment, whether that represents two data points that are going to pop back up, either when they get to first grade or that the next year's 4K is going to be better than we're seeing. That is, I would say, the worrying part of that. One part was anticipated. The other, we've seen a nice little comeback. It's the second wave that we weren't necessarily expecting. If it is a wave, and we don't know.
So when we do next month, multiple scenarios, multiple budget projections, obviously one of the projections will be using this cohort survival method with different revenue and expenditure projections. So we'll play out different scenarios. Maybe it is flatter as far as the loss goes. Maybe it is flat membership moving forward. Maybe there is some future growth and we can play those scenarios out. But just keep in mind that there are clearly weaknesses to a cohort survival method. And we just have to be aware of where those weaknesses are. Really inputting at the 4K level is a guess at this juncture. That can play on the formulas. So thanks, Tony, for adding that piece.
Does the administration, maybe that's a little bit closer to it, Tony alluded to the K-6 numbers are back. Would we say those that left primarily came back? Or did we get a unique group that came?
I would say those that left came back. Yeah.
I do think that that's what we are seeing, and we have tracked each of those individuals. So
When you get down to the individual level,
individual
it's
research.
this
on-
family
on
left and
those.
this family is now back, not a different family.
Yes, and we do obviously always have some normal transition back and forth, new students and students that move. But we did pretty meticulously track all those individuals and did see most of them. Or most of those numbers that we're seeing move back up are students that we had previously.
No, I do want to just do a quick reminder. Even if you do have a couple of students, let's call it 3 or 4 students per grade level that do not come back. 3 or 4 students over the course of 4 elementary schools, with multiple levels, middle school, high school, whatever it looks like, 3 or 4 per grade level is $10,000 per student lost. So why I'm bringing that up is you have 4 per level. There's no adjustments to make there. Might save a marker.
Right, yeah.
However, you lose $500,000. And that's the rough part of what 3 to 4 even per level looks like. Now, that can easily swing. Plus 3 or 4 is a huge difference as well. So playing that, those margins matter. Those margins matter, I guess. Okay. So then, what that brings us to are the budget principles or drivers that we want to make sure are implemented or brought forth. And so we discussed this a little bit at the finance committee as well. And we put forth just in the handout, Tyler, you can scroll all the way to the last slide, but if you want to look back at what the budget drivers have been, what the board has approved since 1819, you could certainly take a look at that. And 2020, let's do the last 2 numbers, 22-23 budget is not going to be tremendously different as we are, as far as drivers go, as we are still within the referendum time period. I think we talked as a committee whether that language transition should occur with the referendum ending after next year. But I think for the most part, we felt comfortable with the language remaining intact while we're still in this 5-year referendum and making that transition as far as what budget drivers are next year when we're looking forward to a year in which the referendum, operational referendum disappears. And then we'll be dealing with different strategies and different challenges at that point. So what's in the handout were just some of the questions that were raised, and really the only change, and you'll probably bring these questions back next year, but the really only change was instead of a 5-year capital plan, we need to have a 10-year capital plan in our mind, especially as our capital improvement trust fund, Fund 46, is now usable. And that means having a 10-year capital improvement plan approved by the board. So given time constraints, again, this month, we'll bring that forward, this 10-year capital improvement plan next month. So just changing that language from a 5-year capital plan to a 10-year capital plan, but everything else really kind of continues to be the major driver of our budget as we plan now in these spring and summer months. Again, anything from the committee can certainly weigh in. So the board language is out there and can certainly be discussed at that point as well, but very similar to what we saw last year from budget.
So again, recap in terms of the calendar. Of course, the fiscal committee will be heavily involved in the next coming few months. Matters will be coming before it. And then the board would expect to see a preliminary budget in June. Preliminary, just because we can't actually approve the official one until October when after the tax rolls are set, right? So, but it really will in June. That's going to look like what the budget's going to look like. There'll be some possibilities for change, but that's what we're expecting. So again, encourage you, if you want to be closer to that process, the best place for you to participate as a board member is through the fiscal management committee. Any other questions or comments on that topic? Seeing none. All right, thank you very much. And we will move on to our second and last item under strategic discussion, which is the Safe Schools update from the superintendent.
Right. I think we have a relatively brief report full of mostly really, really good news. February was a much improved month over January. What has been going well, we have seen a dramatic drop in our positive COVID-19 cases over the past month. in our schools and in our community. We have seen in the community a drop from that substantial or from high to substantial, which is the first time we have seen that this school year. And last week we had one new COVID-19 case, and it literally gives me goosebumps to say that. It was really, really, really good news on top of the week previously where we had only 3 positive new COVID-19 cases. We are very hopeful that we will see this trend continue. And as a result, as you would anticipate, we've seen an increase in our attendance rates for our students and for our staff. We also, at the last meeting and at Ed Services, had a lot of discussion about release letters and getting those release letters in a timely manner. And has that been working more effectively for families? So first of all, at this point, that has no longer become a problem as the health department is dealing with fewer cases. As the medical community is dealing with fewer cases, those letters are able to be turned around very, very quickly. We aren't seeing anybody being held out for those at this point. But in addition to that, we are now providing a release from our district nurse if the student is tested in our WUSD COVID testing, because she is able to access that test data within that system. And we have also added the option of if the family provides the test information, she will also provide that letter of release. So families really have a number of options, but we are still collecting that release data. So our health department feels strongly that that is an effective process and maintains maximum safety while also being as quick and efficient as possible. So that has all been a positive changes. You know, and so this month has been a lot better, but I do want to caution us to still understand we had a month last month that was very, very, very challenging. Lots of student absences, lots of staff absences, and there is now a lot of catch up as you get students now back. You maybe fell behind in your curriculum delivery. You maybe have students who are still really working hard to get caught up. This is still a stressful and difficult and challenging time. Although we are in a much, much better position than we were last month at this time, there are still challenges, and I want to make sure that you are aware of that our teachers are still working incredibly hard and still working through some difficulties. We are continuing to experience staffing shortages for subs, custodial, bus drivers, crossing guards, and paraprofessionals, but we have also seen those numbers improve, and we are still being impacted by the supply line shortages. We just got a notice from TPI today that there's going to be some additional funding to help offset that as well. I've spoken to this. We know we're still dealing with some challenging student behaviors and that staff is still feeling the pressures that I just shared with you. How are we responding and preparing? This month we are implementing our online tutoring pilot. So we are very excited about that at WHS and RMS. To help accelerate some of that student learning. We are hopeful that that will be a positive piece for students and for staff. And our teacher planning day on February 21st was very, very productive for staff and very, 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 very appreciated. So thank you, board, for extending that to them. Our sub incentives and recruitment measures have helped us address our sub fill rate. We are now seeing over 80% fill rates. And of course, there's a combination of factors to that, but we do have some additional subs that came forward, and those incentives were very well received. So lots of good action steps that have helped to address this, as well as the pairing of our COVID numbers coming down. The safety plan updates, we have a release letter information that I just shared with you is now also updated in that safety plan. And over the weekend, we had come in the CDC announcements regarding revised guidance around masking. As it relates to us, in the revised guidance, the CDC clarified that the TSA mask mandate for public transportation does not apply to public or private schools, including early care and education childcare programs. The CDC is making this change to align with updated guidance that no longer recommends universal indoor masking in K-12 and early education settings in areas of low or medium spread. Based on this and based on the fact that the board has stated in our safety plan that we are not requiring masks. I wanted to share this with you this evening, but I would anticipate writing a correspondence to our families tomorrow, sharing that masks would no longer be required on school transportation. If we were going to do something different, the board would have the option of doing a resolution this evening to say that we would still require masks on our buses. I don't anticipate that that's the action that the board wants to take, but you certainly have the ability to do that. Otherwise, I would move forward with that correspondence to our families tomorrow. Any questions on any of that?
Please, Jennifer.
I guess it's a question for the principal. I was really glad, as you just reported out, that the 21st was productive. What ahas or like, did you pick up from your staff as those days went over? What did you do? Explain that.
Well, one of the first things is we have a refresher that many staff members are kind of required to take once a year. It's a nonviolent crisis intervention, and it's a half-day one. And a lot of those are learning strategists, and they feel really that pressure because not be out of the classroom, that some of them have had to be many times. So in the morning, we were able to have that training, which allowed them to relieve that pressure of being able to take the training they need to take, but not be missing out with learning with their kids. That was one of the main things. And just always learning, kind of call it March, February, March, morale for teachers always kind of dips down low. It's kind of one of the lower spots in school year every single year. And this was just a real nice pick me up, and just, you know, they could feel like they got caught back up with a lot of materials and, you know, able to get the materials the students needed to.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, I think with, you know, given all the student absences, especially in January, I think, you know, giving folks a chance to just read, and whether that had to do with grading or contact home or planning for curriculum. I think the timing was great at WHS, and then our trimester comes to an end on March 8th. So just to have that time to just be able to then plan for the remainder of the trimester was huge. So I know it was super appreciated by all the folks that I was able to talk to, in addition to the training day.
Teams were really appreciative. A lot of teams had their day planned out of what they were gonna do, when, what they were gonna plan and map out, like a writing unit. I mean, to have that chunk of time where you're not rushing 1 hour, they were able to get a lot done in one sitting. And I had teachers say it was very nice to not have to plan on Sunday. They felt like their Sunday was actually a Sunday.
too.
Well, they're like, it's always Sunday is always like a, you know, you're planning for Monday, so it felt really nice to get a big chunk of planning in. So that was very appreciated.
We had just had parent-teacher conferences the week before, and those are long nights, you know, they go until about 8 o'clock, and a lot of planning goes into those, so I think they just needed that time to catch up after those.
Other
And I
comments or
have one other
questions?
comment.
Please, go ahead.
I just wanted to commend Margaret or Ed Services or HR, whoever was behind the change in sub-incentives in recruitment, and what a pleasure it is to see that 80% level achieved. What a journey you've been on. So hats off.
Anybody else? The absence of concerns, I take as validation of the move on masks on buses.
Very good.
Okay. Then we will move right into the superintendent's report.
So I couldn't let the month go by without referencing, I said socks, Mr. Kerr shoes, not Mr. Kerr shoes. You can see here that this particular student so admires her high school principal that she had his face put on her footwear. And, you know, while it's kind of a goofy example, it does really show that we have fantastic students and a really positive climate and culture overall in our school district. and certainly a wonderful high school principal. So not way to go, Mr. Kerr, shoes. We have the Gosling Career Fair coming up on March 16th. This is a huge event. And involves partnerships with our community businesses, community manufacturers, community post-secondary education providers. All of our students will be moving through this career fair. It is really a tremendous event, and I encourage you to attend if you can. It is definitely worth seeing and involves a lot of work on the part of a whole lot of people who care a whole lot about our community and about the students that we serve. 4K and 5K enrollment. If you know a 4-year-old, have him or her get enrolled in school as soon as possible. We are counting up those numbers, and we will be making decisions very soon regarding placements. So it is very important that if you want to enroll a 4K or 5K student, that you do so sooner than later. And as you know, we've done a lot of things to make that process as easy as possible. And we have a whole lot of great opportunities, including the option for full day 4K for many, many, many of our students. And we know for many of our families, that is a big convenience. Congratulations to the Blue Review, who were Southern Regional Champions in Division I Kick and Division I Hip Hop, and went on to compete at the state meet. Thank you to our WUSD bus drivers. It was Wisconsin School Bus Driver Appreciation Week, February 14th to the 18th, which is maybe the worst time to drive a bus. So we appreciate all the work that those bus drivers do. I want to give a shout out to Douglas that spent a week working on the Great Kindness Challenge. And here's just, I think, a really fantastic picture of our Douglas students and their fearless leader, Ms. Lesner, out on the Douglas blacktop there, celebrating the end of their Great Kindness Challenge. We had the 100th day of school celebration. Always a big deal across all of our elementaries. And then just an especially fun day this year, given what we had last year going on. It was really positive across the district. If you don't have your tickets, you better get them soon. This is for Grease, which is March 11th, 12th, and 13th. If you've never seen a high school musical before, you are seriously missing out. Our musicals are the best, bar none. We have an amazing, amazing team that puts that on every single year. Make sure you get out and see Grease. And we are hiring. So everything from bus drivers to substitute teachers to paraprofessionals, send them our way. We will gladly embrace them. So that is my superintendent's report. Any questions on that?
Anybody have any questions? All right, then we will move into committee reports. Keep the momentum going here. Fiscal management.
We had everyone from the committee present, as well as Tony Bakashar and Dr. Vitale present. For as far as the payment report goes, same as always, went over some highlighted areas, answered a few questions. Payment report, the variance report memo we went through, there will be some budget adjustments moving forward, both on the revenue and the expenditure side. Still looking really good as far as staying within our budgeted numbers for the end of the fiscal year. We've spent a lot of time already on the 22-23 timeline drivers and enrollment projections. I'll skip past that. Furniture vendor selections, spend just a minute here. We do have this as a proposal tonight. This was, again, down one of the hallways at the high school. We had furniture that was damaged by a wrong cleaner. It was cosmetic in nature, looks like garbage. And we went through the insurance process, and the insurance did approve the damage from a cost recovery. And so that claim came to $280,000. Okay, so that's what furniture costs. So we've been working with, first I worked with a vendor to just get that inventory all lined up, because that took a long time to determine appropriate replacements and get the insurance to sign off on that piece of it. Bringing that back, I think it was in December, January, the committee asked that I get a couple more bids on this project. And we did have another competitive company come in, and working with them now to solidify as comfortable as I am with the first vendor to get as comfortable as needed for this with the second vendor. And that second vendor is looking really good as far as a really viable option with some additional services that the first vendor did not include. And so continue to go down that route. So that's why you see these quotes right now in the just on the board side, not the public, 'cause I'm still working with both of those vendors. However, we are getting into March, and I do not want to necessarily have to wait until March 21st when the board meets again to potentially work with a vendor. So I'm asking at the board level, when the action comes up, that we approve or recommend to approve a not to exceed dollar amount that the high bid is right now, and then allow me to work and get those numbers lower and tighter and get all the services that we want out of either vendor that we go with. It's important to recognize that regardless of the vendor, regardless of replacement costs, it's going to cost the district $10,000. That's our deductible from the insurance. So whether it's all 280 or it's 210, whatever that number is, it's still a $10,000 deductible that we pick up and have to pay. The hit to insurance, when we talk with our insurance broker, they kind of little wishy-washy on it, hard to tell. We can always go back to bid if we feel like the insurance company is holding our feet to the fire because of this hit. He didn't seem too concerned about the overall $200,000 in the grand scheme of what insurance property sees nationwide. He wasn't overly concerned about this affecting rates tremendously, but we always have the chance to go to bid if we see that writing on the wall. So spend some time talking on that, and we can spend more if we want to during the actual agenda item. ESSER 3 update. What I consider really good news is that our report, our what's called the ESSER 3 LEA, which just means we have a learning agency. Plan report to DPI is no longer due March 12th. It is due June 30th. So that gives us some additional time in order to take a look at our plan and continue to gather either A, feedback from community and stakeholders, B, allow administration to fine tune some items as well, and third, or C, whatever, not numeric, I'm using numbers and letters, I can't remember, have the board come together and have discussions. So excited to kind of have a little more time in which to further refine what our plan looks like. At the DPI level, DPI, where this came from, DPI is asking for further detail than what we believe we needed to provide. In other words, the report is more DPI driven with drop-down menus and a real tight form, where I specifically was under the impression that it could be more free form and we could fit into the buckets that we had it fit in. They're fine with that idea, but they need to see a little more detail. So we'll continue to work on that over the next few months. And, Tony, if you have anything specifically to add to that, you certainly can.
There will be a proposed set of meetings for the board and administration to work through to get those details. So it was always our intention, again, to do more detailed planning. And what has been brought forward is basically the state said, oh, you don't have to worry about it. And then they came back and said, oh, you have to worry about it. I said, well, okay, so if you change the rules on us to move the timeline out, I said, yep.
Order of magnitude is that, I mean, we don't have to have hard quotes. Are we looking at budgets that are plus or minus 50%, or just buckets that are a little bit smaller than the first buckets that we put out there?
Buckets that are smaller than the first bucket.
Okay.
Still up to the budget.
Yes, right.
It's just a
You
budget.
can change it as much as you want later, frankly.
Daily. Don't do that. But
They wanted more granular detail.
Finally, Dr. Vitale brought on representatives from the ad agency Fendi to go through proposals in order to highlight what they can do to, and that should say illicit enrollment growth. It's not illegal enrollment growth. It's illicit draw out some enrollment growth for us and advertise in a way that highlights Watertown for what we are. And the committee had questions for them, and again, kind of a tight timeline. We really weren't able to really follow up afterwards very much, but there were several good questions, and we'll be bringing this back at some point to discuss next steps as far as a marketing campaign goes. Our next meeting is on the 16th.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions on that report? Human resources report.
We have a very short report. Committee, we met February 21st at 5:30 p.m. Myself, the full committee chair, our full committee was in attendance. Others present were our superintendent, Cassandra Shug, director of business services, Michael Williamson, and director of human resources, our wonderful Margaret Brady. We went through the consent agenda, which we will be approving later in our consent agenda resolution. So after going through that, we went into closed session. Upon finishing our business in closed session, we reopened and adjourned. So next month, the meeting will be March 14th at 5:30. And I was going to, if you want to add to that, be my guest, Margaret.
Thank you, Steve. I believe that we will be changing our starting time to 5 o'clock to accommodate another potential meeting. So, more information on that, but please keep an eye out for a notice like that for next week.
Okay. Ed Services.
Ed Services met on February 8th, 7:30 at the ESC. All committee members were present. The first thing on the agenda was a discussion about the safety plan. Cassandra tonight updated that, so I won't be redundant on that. Number two, we had a instructional software inventory discussion. And at that, Dave Vitale and Bob Logan provided an overview of the instructional software inventory that we use in the district. The committee engaged in discussion about current titles and usage through the lens of educational services. It was noted by the group that additional details regarding usage versus costs, potential redundancies, and efficacy will be part of future discussions at Ed Services and Fiscal Services meeting in the future. The committee and the administration acknowledge that there are multiple and very data points that tell the story regarding student performance and the impact of instructional materials and the technology behind that. In addition to that, we had a teaching and learning report. Jenny and Aaron discussed the monthly teaching and learning update, including enrollment for 4K. And at that point, we had 114 from 4K with an estimated 15 enrolled on February 1st. So that was a total of 129. Is that right, Jenny?
Yep, for fire.
Okay. And then we also had an outline of the staff development days at the elementary school. They had day 4 of the responsive classroom training. And at the RMS and WHS in the morning, they had their building bridges once again, where they meet with local community businesses. And the goal of that event is to develop community partnerships between the Watertown Unified School District staff and the greater Watertown community. And then in the afternoon, RMS and WHS had focused on avid and restorative practices as well. And then there was a little update on the open door counseling. And it was reported that they were serving between 10 and 20 students 2 days a week. Is that about right, Jenny, as well?
Yep.
Okay. And then talked a little bit about the staff training that was on February 21st, the workday. So that was the end of the agenda. We adjourned at 8:58. The next meeting is March 8th at 7:30. Tuesday, March 8th. Did I miss anything, Dave?
Sounds good.
Any comments or questions on that report? Thank you very much, Paul.
Yep.
And last, we have planning.
Thank you. Planning committee, which meets bi-monthly, alternating with policy committee, met on February 9th. I was present, as was committee member Doug Will, David Smith, and Katie Najarian. Cassandra was with us. Tony came in via Zoom for percentage of the meeting. And then it was quite nice to also have zooming in with us on invitation, our student education representative, Melissa
Matarazzo.
Maserati. Okay, so we had 2 agenda items, basically refinement and review of leading indicators as Cassandra and her cabinet continue to work fearlessly and fiercely on refining those measures. I believe, how does this board see those refinements? Should we have it as an agenda item? I'm sorry?
Yes, I think that would be useful to put it on.
I think we should put that as an agenda item because there's been great improvement and a lot of really good hard work. Congratulations, Cassandra, on that. So we're really trying to continue to refine what are measures that we as a board can track. We're also looking within that, what is we called it a cadence over the course of the year. What measures will we be reviewing at what time? So we're really beginning to understand how to manage the new strategic plan through the board that's meeting bi-monthly. So David, Katie, Doug, anything you want to add? Dave, excuse me. On that? Okay, and then the other thing that this committee is continuing to work on is in support of the revision of board policy 8140, description of board committees. We're reviewing what is the role of the planning committee. We had a good discussion about perhaps we should expand beyond strategic planning, that this committee could figure out a cadence to also check in on a few other activities that involve the board and planning, and that specifically relates to the board's self-evaluation and our development and kind of where does that fit in how we're managing planning at a board level. And also perhaps adding the board evaluation process, not the actual evaluation itself, but the process that's used for superintendent evaluation by the board. So in the end, after pretty good discussion, we are going to present to the policy committee, this revision within policy 8140, which would be reviewed at the March policy committee meeting. We're proposing that the planning committee definition is planning includes work on the systematic long and short-term planning to improve the operations of Watertown Unified School District, to work towards increasing student achievement and to advance the cause of education in the schools and communities. It is the responsibility of this committee to develop and monitor the processes that the board will use for strategic planning, board self-evaluation, and board's evaluation of the superintendent. So anything any committee member would like to add to that? Okay. And with that, we adjourned. It was right around 7 o'clock. Next meeting for the planning committee is Wednesday, April 13th.
Thank you. Comments or questions on that report? Thank you very much. Our next item up is the consent agenda, resolution 9083. The consent agenda includes our board meeting minutes, as well as the committee summaries, personnel staffing, retirements, resignations, and appointments, as well as the approval of bills, And first and second reading of policies. Please note in this particular case, there are no policies under consideration. Do I hear a motion on resolution 9083?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Jennifer, seconded by Steve. Comments or questions on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please, Paul.
Paul Van Langenberg, yes. Doug Will,
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Jennifer Bakke,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader,
Yes.
David Smith.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Next, we have two resolutions under action items. The first is resolution 9084, and this is the previously described list of budget drivers for our 2022-2023 budget process. Do I hear a motion on resolution 9084?
So moved. Second.
Moved by David, seconded by Doug. Comments or questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Opposed? And the motion carries. And the last item is resolution 9085. It is also the previously described furniture bid with a not to exceed amount, and again, an out-of-pocket limit for the district of $10,000. Do I hear a motion on 9085? Moved by Katie. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Tina. Comments or questions on the motion?
I have just a comment on it. And I appreciate what Mike has done here. It was a lot of work to get all this put together. I have just a thought on it as far as replacing furniture. If, like, we have 264,000 not to exceed. I have, just an idea of that, if there's some furniture that is usable in the classroom and the teacher or their staff feels, hey, this is gonna work for us to educate our children, that there'd be some sort of a reward for them somehow not to utilize that, where they could use the money, like just say $1,000 desk. Hey, we're good with this one that we have. So the district basically is saving the $1,000 because we have the insurance money right now, correct? So then,
We have 200,000.
yeah,
And anything above that, we have to turn in
okay,
our receipts in essence to show that we are
right.
purchasing.
Okay, it's just a discussion on this. So they don't need this desk. It's gonna work fine for them. So my idea was to have the staff, if they saved $1,000, that somehow they could have 50% of that money or some percentage go back into their classroom for other things that make their classroom more teachable for their students. In other words, say we need, every classroom has their budget in the high school, where this is, that, yeah, I don't need this $13,000 worth of whatever. I can, if we don't spend that money, that they get $7,500 or $6,500 in other things that they could spend one time. So
I hear the idea.
it's not that I want to change this resolution.
Yeah, it's just there is the money is to replace, not to add. So there's some constraint as to how much of a wiggle room you could have in redirecting the funds to something other than the replacement of the furniture. They're going to look for, they presented with a list of values of furniture that's going to be replaced.
It's why they don't just give the 280,000 upfront. They go, you get this 200, and now we need to see what you're actually doing to get the remainder. By the way, it's 10,000. I don't mind the creativity of it. I think, just in the end, it's $10,000. So if a classroom costs $13,000 and we get one classroom that says, don't replace any of it, I want this, and if that was feasible, we wouldn't see a $13,000 savings. We'd still have to spend the $10,000 out of pocket.
No, I get that. I just was trying to
Yeah.
come up with,
Yeah, no,
like if this desk is workable and it's got a scratch here, yeah, we can replace it, or we can, you know, that's all I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's like when you get in a car wreck, right? Hey, I'm gonna leave that dent in my back.
I don't even know that.
I
Doug.
don't
I
really
what we're
care.
talking about.
Well,
I think the key difference is they haven't in this sense declared it total.
Right.
So it's not just you get to walk away and do whatever you want. That's part of the issue, is just constraints.
okay, well, that was just my,
I like your
thought.
thinking though. Thank you for
That's
bringing it out.
All right, any other comments or questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Paul Van Langenberg, yes. Doug Will,
yes,
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Jennifer Baki,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader,
Yes.
David Smith.
Yes.
And the motion carries. This brings us to the second opportunity for public input. Again, members of the public present in person or online may be recognized to address the board. If you're here in person, just raise your hand. If you're online, use the raise your hand feature and we will recognize you at that time. Please give your name and address if you are making comments. Is there anyone who'd like to be recognized? Online, do you have anyone? All right, then I'll hear a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
second,
Moved by Jennifer, second by Doug. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. We stand adjourned.
Shrek.
No, right?
This is April Fool's Day. Just checking.
Maybe since I've been on the board.
It's always been done that way. It's always been done that way.